Hello and welcome back to the Widow podcast. Today I have got the lovely Kat with me, aka the Hormone Fairy. I met Kat through Instagram. It must have been a few years ago now, mustn't it? I can't think how long
I think it's
it's been.
at
Yeah.
least 2 years. Well, it's like this last 2 years hasn't happened, but it's at least 2 years, if not
Yeah,
longer.
definitely. Met through the wonderful world of social media. Our stories are very similar. So we kind of connected on that level, but also Kat, being the hormone fairy, has a lot of understanding around the menopause and how that impacts us, but also maybe how that can impact our grief and ways maybe we can support ourselves with that, because it's huge, isn't it? It does
Yeah.
have such an impact on us. And I think sometimes, and I've certainly spoken to women in my groups, in my membership and what have you, that then they're sometimes not sure whether what they're feeling is grief or hormonal, and it's quite hard to pinpoint the
Yes,
difference.
I know, because it's all so similar.
Yes, this is it. And they really do have these moments of, I don't even know if this is actually grief, or maybe this is my hormone, maybe this is something else. And then
This is now me, the new version of me.
yeah, it's really hard to navigate it all, isn't it? And make sense of it. So Kat, can you tell us obviously a little bit about your story with your husband David?
Yes, it's very similar to yours, Karen. So David what was he? David passed away in September 2018. Had a cardiac arrest on a bike ride. He had a cardiac arrest 9 months prior to that. So he had his first cardiac arrest in the November 2017. I don't know how he survived. So much went wrong in the hospital.
Wow.
But he survived that and was put on medication, and doctors just told him to carry on as normal. Even though his heart rate was extremely low, he was out spinning, biking. He was a golf professional, so he was golfing, doing so much. I look at it and say he was doing way too much exercise. And, the day he passed away, he had been spinning, and then he went on a long bike ride and passed away, cardiac arrest at the roadside. And sadly, by the time the air ambulance got there was just nothing they could do. So yes, that was David passed away when he was 52. So I was 42 years old. I had already started my perimenopause journey. My own hormones started to shift at 39. I've been doing the work. I've been doing the natural medicine, the hormones for so many years, and dealing with women in post-menopause, that I didn't even see it happening to myself.
Wow.
It was one moment I was, wake up, everything's fine, happy. And then later in the day, I just turn into like Cruella de Vil. I would like lock myself in the bathroom, because I knew that by the time my son or daughter got home, I could just take myself away to the bathroom. Nobody would know, nobody would disturb me. I would cry for no reason. No reason. I had everything back then. I had the house, the cars, the holidays, the business, partnership. And I was crying for no reason. I remember David used to say, "What on earth's wrong with you?" And I was like, "I don't know." And it wasn't until I sat in front of my own clients all day that I realized, oh my goodness, I've got what they've got.
Wow.
Even though I'm trained in this, I know all the symptoms, I didn't link it to my own.
It just goes to show, doesn't it, sometimes, that we really do not listen to our own bodies. We don't take care of ourselves. We're so busy in life.
Yes.
That our own needs just go unmet, don't they?
Yeah, they do. As women, we put ourselves last as women.
Always. Yeah.
And I still see it. I see it every day. I hear from women that are putting themselves last. It's so frustrating.
So how long did it take you to realize that that's what was happening?
I'll be honest, it was only a few weeks. And it was just one day when I was in front of clients that I realized. And, my mum never talked about hormones or menopause. No. That generation didn't. No. And I would say it's only really been the last 2 years. My mum has started to be more open about her own journey in menopause, her emotional states. My mum was quite a young widow. So that whole grieving process, the stress, the anxiety. My mum was 42 when she went through the menopause, her period stopped. And quite often we can follow our mother's or grandmother's pattern. So for me, I managed, once I realized what was going on, I started to bring things back into balance with diet, natural medicine, taking more care of myself. So then I was 3 years in when David passed, and I did a hormone test. I use the Dutch test with clients. I did a hormone test about 6 months after David passed, and oh my goodness, it was just cortisol, the stress, you know, my progesterone had dropped. It was the cortisol, the stress that I was under, and I felt I was fine, because, you know, when you'll know this in your clients, and I'm sure every woman you speak to, we just get on with things. You know, our partner dies, we have that grieving process, but then we still have children, we still have a house, we still have to earn money, so we just carry on in some ways in that hamster wheel to start with. And it was then, if I look back now and I can look at photographs of my eyes, or I can look at, and I can just see that I was still heavily grieving. Even now, 3.5 years on, I have days where I'm grieving. But no wonder my hormones were all over the place. I wasn't sleeping. I was drinking more because my friends, you know, they're trying to keep you, you know, busy. So my friends were taking me out to dinner, drinking, things that I wouldn't normally be doing. I wasn't taking care of myself. So my symptoms actually got so much worse. Periods, heavy periods, painful periods, all due to stress, a lot of it.
So what's this Dutch test then? What does that look for?
So the Dutch test is a dried urine test. You know, doctors will do a blood test. They're reluctant to do blood tests because blood tests do not show enough information until you get closer to menopause. Menopause is when your period stopped. So you've got this transition beforehand that can take, you know, 12, 15 years for some women.
Wow.
Where your hormones are starting to decline. So you're going on a roller coaster of hormones, but they're starting to decline. That can take 12 to 15 years for some women. So from 40 through to 55 for many women. And it's all of this, that these changes, these hormonal shifts that can cause all the symptoms. So the blood test doesn't show enough information. I use the Dutch test, which is a dried urine test. It's similar to doing a pregnancy test. But it looks at all of your hormones. So it looks at your sex hormones, so the estrogens, progesterones, testosterones, sees how you're metabolizing and utilizing that estrogen too, which can be really important, especially for women that are taking medication like HRT or birth control. But then it's also looking at your cortisol, so your stress hormone, which can throw out everything. You know, if you're stressed, that can throw out your progesterone. It can cause so many symptoms that are similar to menopause.
Wow. And in that, having that sort of, I'm assuming you get the cortisol level. Does it tell you? So it obviously tells you that the level of it, if you've got more, but does it tell you if it's sort of constantly running, or if you have peaks and troughs?
So we look at the cortisol, we look at over a 24-hour period.
Okay.
So how your cortisol is when you wake up first thing in the morning, because ideally we want our body to give us a nice spike of cortisol to keep us going during the day, and then later on in the day it will start to decline so that we tail off before we go to sleep. That is the ideal pattern. Quite often with women, if they've been through prolonged periods of stress, so whether it's from being widowed, or it could just be women that are just generally stressed, working a lot, or looking after elderly parents, just on high alert the whole time, because stress is good for us. We need some stress in our life. But the sad thing is most of us are constantly in a state of stress.
Well, especially when grieving.
Grieving, exactly, because it just everything out. And you know, when you're stressed, when your cortisols are high, it's pushing out your blood sugar levels. You can store more fat around the tummy. Then it can block your progesterone receptors, so then you can be more estrogen dominant for some women. So that's why, you know, you can feel the heavy periods, the painful periods. It could be that you're stressed and throwing it out. I know even myself now, you know, I'm pretty even keeled, but if I have a few weeks where maybe at Christmas time where I'm not looking after myself and my diet, drinking too much, eating too much, not going and exercising, a bit stagnant, I can find quite often after that my period's painful, or I'm all bloated, my period's heavier, and that can be linked because it's the cortisol, the stress. So it's so important to start looking after your body. Any woman going through the 40s and 50s, start putting number one in the back, looking after the body. But if you're grieving and you've been recently widowed, then even more important to start listening to your body. It's key.
It gives us so many signs, doesn't it, our body? And I think we don't listen to it, we don't understand, and I think we almost are used to living in a place of like dis-ease, aren't we? You know, that it's almost become normal to feel bloated and have headaches and be tired and sluggish and a bit ratty, because that's kind of how everyone is, and that's normal, because it's not, is it? That's not how
our body. Any symptom is a sign that your body is diseased or not happy. Your body's not happy. If you're having headaches, if your skin's dull or dry, like you say, if you're bloated, if you've got aches and pains, it's a sign that your body needs some TLC, that something's going wrong.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the thing is, you know, emotions can get, you know, I'm trained in Chinese medicine as well, but the emotions can get stored inside our body. So grief very much sits on our lungs. And, you know, so if you're a woman that's grieving, maybe you're waking up between 3 and 5 o'clock in the morning, then that can sit on your lungs, and you're more prone then to colds, coughs, pneumonia, viruses, because the grief sits on your lungs. That's how you see it in Chinese medicine. So it's really important to start relieving that. And anxiety symptoms tend to be lung related.
And how is that different for everyone? How we learn to release that and let the grief out, or is there sort of a best practice way?
Everyone's different. You know, some women, you know, the coaching, the talking therapy can be the best thing. You know, how you work with women. For me, I used homeopathic remedies to start with. So homeopathic remedies for, firstly, initially the shock. So I was taking things like arnica, ignatia for the shock of that. And then flower essences can be beautiful, really lovely and gentle, that you can keep in your handbag and take whenever you need to for the grief, for the anxiety. And then later on, the biggest shift, I would say, for me more recently was hypnosis. And I think I'd experienced hypnotherapy before, and great in the moment, a little bit like going on a guided meditation, but nothing. And then I actually experienced last year rapid hypnosis, and I've trained in it since because it was so powerful. It was, I didn't realize, Karen, how much grief was still inside me and how it was holding me back.
Wow.
Yeah. So I was just, I met somebody that put me into hypnosis and left me, you know, said a few trigger words that left me to go off, and my subconscious mind just unraveled. It was like everything just came out, and I sat sobbing. I sobbed for half an hour, just cried. That's in incredible. A state of hypnosis, which is just a state of trance. It's a state of focus. It's something that we go into every day naturally ourselves. Okay. I sat and cried for half an hour, Karen, sobbing. I didn't realize that was trapped inside me. And afterwards it was like, weight of the world to just.
And is that something you can now access yourself, or do you go back and have it done?
No, I access it myself now. Yeah, and it's just, you know, I did it the other day, and actually it took me, you know, in my own mind, I went off and I saw, from being, I think I was 5 years old, and I cried over my uncle, who would have been my grandfather figure. I cried over that, and I was thinking, where did that come from?
Just amazing, isn't it?
Because even back then, as children, we don't know how to grieve. As children, we're not. You just get on with it, and the next day you're out playing again.
And they're formative years, aren't they? And they have such an impact on the rest of our lives and who we become. And like you say, there can be so much there, and grief always triggers old wounds, doesn't it? So
It
you often
does.
find that when
Yeah.
something big happens in your life, it brings up other losses, and not always just deaths either, but other things that
No.
have happened in your
Yeah.
life that maybe have been a bit traumatic.
Yeah.
But learning how to, do they need tending to a bit? Are they still there within you?
Yeah.
Like you said, I can imagine that feeling of release that you must have
Yeah.
felt
Oh,
when
it's
you did
incredible.
that.
And I didn't know it was there. I felt I dealt with,
Yeah.
because we do when we're widowed, we cry and we
Mm-hmm.
let it out, and we have good days and bad days, and there are days where we cry on our own, or anxiety comes up around whatever's going on, and we haven't got that husband, that partner to help us.
Yes.
But that was stored. It was like I filed a folder in my. Or how I can explain it is like I had a filing cabinet,
Yeah.
and I'd obviously popped it in there,
Locked it.
locked it, and locked a big key on my heart and everything. And it was just like, whoa, where did that come from?
And what changed for you after you released that?
Business wise, I was much more focused. So
Mm-hmm.
it changed that. But also I became more open, to meeting people, relationships.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, completely.
Yes.
Changed on that sense.
Yeah. And that's huge as well, isn't
huge.
it?
It is huge. Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard, and and I know we've spoken about this before, haven't we? But that opening yourself up to a new relationship and everything that brings, it's complicated for both parties, actually. And I speak to a lot of widows in my groups. I don't want to meet anyone else again. I don't want to go there, and I get it, because it's you're putting yourself in a very vulnerable situation again, aren't you?
Completely.
Which is scary, but also there's that sense of feeling like you're being, you're betraying your person, you're being disloyal, and sort of working through all that as well. And it's not a quick fix, is it? Trying to meet someone else.
It's hard in your 40s. It's not easy anyway. Everyone's got their own baggage, haven't they?
Absolutely. We've all got stuff. And it's hard sharing stuff with people, taking on theirs, then taking on yours, and understanding each other, because it's complex and messy. So that for you then was obviously quite powerful. Did your knowledge of your hormones and how they could impact how you dealt with your emotions, with your grief, were you able to utilize that throughout and use it to help you?
Yeah, I was. I'm very grateful. I trained in homeopathy and natural medicine after my dad died. Actually, that's what triggered me to go down that route. Interestingly enough, it's that change when I was, I'd always been interested in natural medicine. Never quite trusted the doctors, because they had failed my father, they'd failed my son when he was a child. So I've always been interested in the natural medicine approach. And it was when my dad died that I suppose actually that was a little bit like a midlife crisis. I was 32 when my dad died, I believe. Yes, 32 when my dad died. And we'd been expecting him to die since I was 12 years old. Heart stuff. So for me, heart stuff in my family is it's interesting that David then I chose somebody that had the heart conditions in his family too. So from age 12 we'd expected my dad to die, and we thought he'd have 10 years, then we were given another 10 years. So that's the way we lived. And I think that's probably how my mum grieved quite quickly. She had created her own life, her own friendship group, so she was ready when my dad died in some way. And I think we probably grieved him a little bit before he passed. Again, he died of heart issues. But that's what triggered me. I thought, right, I'm 32, what's next for me? My children were getting older. What did I want for me going forward? And that's what I then trained in natural medicine. So yes, those tools were very much there for me. As with anything, we don't always see what's going on. So I did occasionally call my own homeopath or my coach and ask, for advice and some tools, because sometimes you can't quite see what's going on. but yeah, it definitely helped me. And that knowledge of knowing that, you know, food is medicine.
Mm. And is that what, you know, you talk about natural medicine, is that what it is, essentially, food?
No, I use so food is, you know, food is medicine. I use homeopathic or herbal remedies with my clients, you know, a lot, either alongside, when it comes to menopause, either alongside the HRT, or some women choose not to take HRT or antidepressants. That's the other thing. So many women in their 40s are just given antidepressants, and yeah, that can be amazing, but really it's just like acting as a plaster. It's not getting to the root cause of your issues. So as women in our 40s, 50s, we're talking about widows here and grief, and an antidepressant can help you get through the day, but it's just sticking a plaster on it. It's not uncovering what's really going on underneath that grieving process. And then, as we were talking, you know, we've spoken at length before, Karen, is that grieving process anyway, as women, 40s and 50s, the sense of who are we, where is our life going, relationships breaking down, you know, guilt around relationships, even if you are, you know, widowed, there can be some guilt around relationships there. That sense of who you were, work, career, what you want to do with your life. So it's learning to deal with that, and homeopathic medicine, flower essences, herbal remedies can be amazing, as well as the hypnotherapy to uncover what's truly going on underneath. It's almost like you see yourself as an onion. If you imagine you're an onion, and in the heart of the onion is who you really are, and you've got to peel back those layers. And that's what can be so beautiful with natural medicine. Instead of sticking the plaster on like a pill, we're peeling back the layers.
Oh, that's lovely.
Yeah, really gentle.
And that's a lovely, you know, because there are so many layers on us, aren't there? You know, I think we go through life, and again, we've talked about this before, kind of, you get on the hamster wheel of life, and there's all these expectations and pressures that we put on ourselves, and trying to live up to everyone else's standards, and trying to fit in with everyone and be liked and be accepted, and we do lose that sense of self, don't we, who we are at our core, at the heart of the onion. And that can lead us to feeling really lost and unfulfilled, and not knowing who we are, where we're heading, and what's going on. And obviously, you know, throw grief into it as well. It's really tough. It's really tough. So, I mean, you've talked about food as a medicine. Let's talk about that, because obviously this is a tricky one, when you're grieving, isn't it? You know, you go from being a family, a couple, and all of a sudden it's, you know, you might still have kids to cook for, but you normally don't eat what the kids eat. So, or if you haven't, if it's just you on your own, cooking for yourself, people don't bother. We sometimes turn to alcohol and fast foods and chocolate and cake and biscuits and chips and all that. And we all know that that's not nutritious food. It's not giving our body what it needs. I mean, you know, when we talk about food as medicine, do you have some basic fundamental kind of guides, pillars that you kind of say to people, if this is the best you can do in a difficult time, that this will help?
It's a very boring subject when it comes to food at the end of the day, but the key is, you know, perimenopause years, postmenopause years, you have to look after. So the three things that you want to be looking after is your digestive system, your gut, your liver, because your liver is having to deal with, you know, your hormones, and your adrenal glands that produce your stress. So they're the three areas that we really need to start thinking about. So gut health, liver health, adrenal health. So if we're then going and we're already stressed, so adrenal glands are working on overdrive, so we need to start thinking about resting. When we're stressed, our digestive system shuts down, and that's why so many women who are grieving, maybe they're not hungry because they're stressed, they're anxious, their digestive system is shut down. That can be the same for perimenopausal women too. You don't have to be grieving as such, but your digestive system's shutting down, and then that's when you can crave the foods. So you're just craving, you think, okay, well, I'll open a bottle of wine. Instead of eating same amount of calories, I'll just open a bottle of wine because that will just dull. That again is a bit like putting a plaster on, a bit like taking an antidepressant. Drink a bottle of wine and it will just numb your feelings.
Yeah.
But so many women turn to alcohol.
I did.
You know, and I did.
Yes.
I did. I think I was drinking every night.
Alcohol and
my
food.
hormones.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, hormones are all over the place. Or you're going out because you're socializing, trying to keep yourself happy. So you're looking for a fix outside of yourself. And the same with cake. You know, I'm a huge cake fan.
Oh, me too.
Cupcakes with icing. It's just
heaven.
So it's thinking about that. So whenever you're looking at food, I always say to people, the easiest thing is you need to remove crap from your diet, really. So, you know, some of the bad carbohydrates, your refined sugars, the alcohol, the caffeine. So it's a little bit dull. It's going back to basics. It's going back to, you know, did it grow? Can you pick it out of the ground? Can you pick it from a tree? Can you kill it, you know, if you're eating meats, you know, fish? So it's going back to the basic foods, cutting out the rubbish. Sadly, there's, you know, we look at the size of the supermarkets nowadays. They're huge, but you have what, 2 aisles that are fruit, meat, vegetable, maybe some dairy and fish. The rest is just coloured packages. So I always say to people, think about, the easiest way to think about it is, imagine that you've got 3 tables in front of you. You've got a red table, an amber table, and a green table. So the red table is the one that you're putting all the unhealthy stuff, the stuff that you know is not good for you. So the alcohol, the crisps, the chocolate, the cakes, the pastas, you know, caffeine, the coffees that are keeping you up at night, put all of those on the red table. The green table is the table that you can eat in abundance. So the healthy food, the food that's going to make you feel alive, vibrant, that's going to help to balance your hormones. So your vegetables, your fruits, your nuts and seeds, your grains, water, plenty of water. And then think about the amber table is where you can put some things, you know, the treats, because life would be very dull, Karen, if we just ate healthy the whole time. We need those little treats, you know, when our hormones are playing up. Maybe we do need that cake or the chocolate bar. Or the glass of wine occasionally. That's many women's, you know, I think we spoke about this, didn't we? So many women end up giving up alcohol. They find it can't agree with them. But think about that amber table is where you put the odd treats. So maybe at the weekend or if you're out for a night. And then every time you're eating, think about that red, amber, green, and that can start changing that process. It's key. It's proteins, you know, your good fats, your vegetables. Healthy grains, lots of nuts and seeds, lots of healthy snacks, lots of water. A little bit boring, but if you remember that, you know.
And it has a huge impact, because I remember I have a very sweet tooth, always have done. I love cake and all those yummy sweet treats, you know, and I've had a problem with it since I was a teenager. You know, I remember my mum going out and I would be straight into the treat cupboard and eating as much as I could until she got back, or if I got some money I'd be at the shop. And it's gone on through my life. You know, I've never particularly been taught how to eat well, always been overweight. And you know, Simon died, he was 43 years old, I was 39. I spent a couple of years drinking, eating, partying, distracting myself from my grief, just trying to get through in the best way that I could. And I kind of was approaching 42 and my kids were starting to say things, and I thought, you know what, I really need to make some changes here. My husband had a heart attack at 43. I'm 42. Like, you're really not doing this in the right way. And I got myself a coach to help me with my diet and to get fitter and stronger. And I cannot tell you the difference it has made to my life. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not perfect. I'm still a little bit overweight. I'm a lot less overweight than I used to be. I'm a hell of a lot fitter than I used to be. I eat a lot better. The thing is I feel so much better, you know, and when I have days now, or a couple of days, you know, you fall off the wagon a bit. You go on holiday, it's Christmas, but you know, you eat the rubbish food, you overindulge, you might have a couple of glasses of wine too many, or what have you. Not that I particularly drink much anymore, but Oh my goodness, the impact it has on my digestion system, my gut, the
Yeah,
bloatingness, I get, I get pains, almost like
yeah,
IBS pains. I feel tired, sluggish. It affects my sleep, my mood, my energy levels, everything. My
yeah.
ankles swell up. I get all this
I know.
stuff,
I think we're in our
headaches.
40s. It's just like,
Yeah,
oh my goodness.
that's it. And then I'm like, right, okay, you need to rein it back. And then I just, the fog lifts. I feel I get this clarity, this energy, this just this inner peace almost.
Yeah.
It's, and like I say, I'm not perfect. It could be a whole lot better, but the what I've noticed is the impact what we put in our mouth has on us.
It's huge. It's huge. The
Massive.
gut is seen as the second brain. So, that
Mm.
gut brain connection is huge. And
Mm.
women that are struggling with anxiety tends to be the symptom I see most in women perimenopause, late 30s, early 40s. So anxiety coming from absolutely nowhere, crying for no reason, feeling low, depressed, suicidal thoughts very much are a huge thing at the moment for women. And then if you put on the added, you've been widowed, you're grieving, so your cortisol levels are even higher. We have to look after our gut. We have to think about fueling our body properly, as that cortisol is just going to make us even more cranky. It's going to add to that belly fat. It's going to brain fog. That was one of my biggest things, actually, Karen. I think it was 6 months after David died. And I think my daughter said, I'd ask her the same question 3 times. And she said, I'm not going to tell you anymore because like you've got dementia. And it was when I looked at my hormone test, my cortisol was through the roof.
Wow.
And that can cause brain fog and lack of concentration, lack of mojo. So, and even eating, if we're eating the wrong foods, that can spike our cortisol as well. So that's stress hormone. So it's not just, it's what we eat as well as thinking about, being a little bit more mindful. Really important.
It is, isn't it? And exercise, I really truly believe that exercise has massively helped me deal with my grief, the emotions, the stress that you encounter when you are thrown into the world of widowhood. And it's finding ways of releasing all of that, isn't it, to help reduce those cortisol levels. And you don't have to go out and run marathons or anything, but finding something that you enjoy doing, that brings the exercise in. It's just so important.
It's important and that's where another thing is so important. We don't need to be doing the stressful going out running, doing the long cardio classes, because that's just going to add to that stress hormone. There was a lady I know that's grieving. She's been grieving for a long time over the loss of her son. And she posted on social media the other day, she was doing 2 back-to-back cardio classes and weights. So 2.5 hours of exercise and wondering why she's not losing weight and why she's feeling hormonal. And it's like you're just pumping more cortisol into your system. So that's it's being mindful. Ideally, we don't need to be doing, as I say, the heavy cardios. 20 minutes fast walking 3 times a week. Walking in nature can be incredible to relieve anxiety, stress, and just help us process grief and what we're going through.
Yeah.
And then listening to your body, that's the big thing, Karen. If you're exhausted, you're knackered, the last thing you want to be doing is going out doing a big heavy bike ride. You want to be thinking, okay, what can I do? Go for a gentle walk, go for a swim, do some yoga, maybe just put the music on and dance around your kitchen. Anything that can be fun without challenging your body too much. So that's the biggest thing. Every day, listen to your body. How's it feeling? How's your energy levels?
And what do you say to people? Because sometimes, I'm often saying to people, rest, learn to be more present, to sit with your grief, to sit with yourself. But there's that fear of the silence, of the loneliness, of what's going to come, the emotions that are going to show up, the feelings that they're going to feel. I mean, how do you go about encouraging people that are feeling anxious and are maybe grieving, going through stuff, to slow down, to give themselves permission to rest and restore a little bit, but also, you know, manage that those fears of what they're going to be presented with when they slow down?
That can be a challenge because it's the added loneliness for women that are on their own. It's the added being on their own, loneliness, and you're sitting in your thoughts. But allowing those thoughts to come up and allowing them to come up so that you're not storing them in your body, because if you store the thoughts, they can create more disease. And allowing those thoughts to I almost say, like, imagine whether it's light above your head or you've got a bubble, allow those thoughts to come up, allow them to process, and allow them to float away. If you need to cry, maybe sit down, writing them down on paper, journaling, getting the thoughts out of your head is so important. The other thing is, you know, maybe it's putting, for you, it might be resting, it might be reading a book, it might be listening to some music, watching TV, watching Netflix. That can be resting too.
Yeah.
So it's listening to your feelings, allowing them to come up.
You're right. You know,
rather
I think
than storing inside your body, which can pain the disease.
Yeah, so true, isn't it? You know, I always say to clients, it's not what we let out that causes us harm, it's what we keep in. Because everything that we keep in, you know, it keeps us in that place of discomfort, and it can keep us stuck, preventing us from moving forward. So, I mean, obviously there's a lot there, and I'm sure there's a whole lot more, because the hormones, you know, it's a whole world, isn't it?
Complicated.
Yeah, and it's different for everyone, as is grief. But what have you learned? You know, it's been 3.5 years for you since David died, and I know you've got 2 children. Is
two?
Yes, 2
Mine
children.
are
older now, aren't they? Yeah. But what do you think that your grief has taught you up to this point? Do you feel like you've gained anything, any learnings, insights, perspective changes from it?
I very much go with the flow now. So I am more of a go with the flow, try not to worry about the future, because you don't know what's going to happen. Whereas before I was very into the law of attraction, or projecting the future, and you just don't know when that's going to change. So very much now I try to live in the present day, try not to worry about the future. You know, anxiety is thoughts of the future, depression, sadness, thoughts of the past. So I very much try to live in the present moment and see life as a gift. Not always, you know, sometimes I may slip into the anxiety, or slip back in. You know, if I'm having a bad day, it happens. But if I have a bad day, I allow that to process, and very much doing what I want to do, whether that's something that happened from being 40 anyway. I don't do things that I don't want to do. So boundaries are huge for me. So I'm very much, you know, if somebody asks me to do something, I don't want to do it. Something doesn't feel right, I listen to my energy, I listen to my body, and I will say no, and I will say what I think now, which can be challenging for some people. For friends, it can be very challenging, but I respect myself more, I feel.
Yes.
Yeah.
And how is that received? You know, you putting those boundaries in place and listening to your body, and maybe not doing the things that, you know, you might ordinarily have done in a past life. What reaction do you get from people?
Being honest, Karen, my friendship circle has shrunk, and that feels good to me.
Yes.
I remember my dad saying when I think it was probably about 17, 18, and my dad said, you can count your friends, your true friends, you can count on one hand. And I was thinking, that's so ridiculous. But it's so true. My friendship circle is very, very small. I have, you know, my close girlfriends, a couple of male friends that I want to spend time with. And even, you know, with anything on social media, I do what I want to do now. I don't worry about what other people think, because to be honest, it's none of my business. What other people think is none of my business. That's just going to create anxiety if I think about what they're thinking. I have had a few friends, when I've said things, it's caused a reaction in them. And that's their reaction. It's very much, I see myself, if somebody's offended or takes what I say wrong, then I've triggered them. I've acted like a mirror at the end of the day. And I try not to be honest, I try not to worry about it now, Karen.
I think it's really interesting, isn't it? I've definitely learned that how other people choose to behave says way more about them than it does about you, doesn't it? And I think you're right. I think when we go through changes in life and we sort of almost take back our power a little bit, it triggers something in others, doesn't it? It almost highlights areas in their life that maybe they're not comfortable with, but maybe aren't ready to face yet, or don't know how to, but it certainly can bring up a lot of stuff. And it is tricky, isn't it? It is tricky.
It is.
You know, you do meet resistance.
Yeah, and it can feel lonely. It can, if you've upset someone. I know I upset my girlfriend overnight, and I was like, oh wow. But actually it was the best thing, because I realized we were no longer aligned, and it allowed space for other people to come in who were more in alignment with me. And my next phase of my journey, it's like they say, isn't it? Friends come into your life for a reason, a season, a lifetime. And it's remembering that when someone leaves, it's.
And I was just about to say that poem actually, because I discovered, somebody mentioned this poem to me after Simon died, and I was talking about the shifts in relationships and friendships, because you know, we go through romantic relationships in life, and sometimes they fall apart, don't they? And you walk away from the relationship. There's a breakup. But it's very different with friendships, isn't there? You know, people come into your life and there's almost this expectation that you have to stay friends forever. But you don't, you know, people aren't always in your life for a lifetime. You know, people come in for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. And it's learning that it's okay if people come and go. They might come back later in life, and you might rekindle that relationship. But you don't have to hold on to things that are no longer serving you or aren't aligned with you and where you're going. And I think one of the biggest things is surrounding yourself with people that inspire you, motivate you, you know, want the best for you, support you, nurture you, make you feel alive, connected, loved, safe, rather than, you know, sometimes you walk away from people, don't you? And you kind of think, I feel really disconnected and actually quite sad or unhappy, or like they don't care, or they've triggered something in you know. It's really noticing what the body is telling you every time, isn't it? You know, whether it's what you're eating,
listening to body.
And it will guide you, your gut instincts, your symptoms, your behaviors, your thoughts. It's all telling you something. They're all an invitation to something that needs some attention, and rather than, like you say, just kind of putting a plaster on it, drinking the wine, taking the and yet, you know, sometimes, I'm not saying never drink the wine or take the tablets, you know, sometimes sometimes
that's needed.
It's needed.
You need that. Sometimes you need a duvet day and you know, a sulking day. You need that sometimes.
And you know, we don't always feel motivated, do we? To do the things, and we do, and again, it's that rest. It's kind of like, you know, just slow down a little bit. It's okay. Life can be really hard, and with everything that's going on, it's learning to be kind to yourself and
very much
listen to what your body's teaching you, guiding you towards, because it knows the way, you know, doesn't it? It's like you have all the answers within you. They're there, but it's kind of uncovering them for sure. So, I mean, what does your grief look like now, Kat, 3.5 years in?
It's changed. It's shifted, as it would. It's now, I still miss David. It tends to be I miss him when there's a problem and I need something fixing. It tends to be one of those ones, or if something's, you know, going on with the children. But it's shifted. It's easier. It's much easier.
Do you feel more in control of it rather than it's being in control?
Yes,
of
definitely, completely in control.
Yeah.
And for me, I still go in, you know, his grave's very close to me, and I walk the dog, and I still put flowers on there every week. And it was a thing that I always, whenever I walked the dog, I walked there daily. And I've noticed that more regularly, more recently, I'm not going quite as often.
Yes.
You know, so I don't always walk through the the graveyard when I'm walking the dog. So I've noticed that changing. And just being open to new things. So it has definitely changed and shifted.
It does shift, doesn't it? And I think there are changes in things like that sometimes we, with that, walking through the graveyard, sometimes we notice we're not doing it, and then we almost place this guilt, this shame on us, don't we, of making it mean something it doesn't mean. Like, I'm being disloyal, I don't love them anymore. And it's not, it's just a shift in the grief, isn't it? It's you need something different, and that's okay. It's learning to go with it and not layer it with extra suffering that isn't necessary.
Just going with the flow.
I love that flow. We all need more flow, don't we?
I think that's probably, I've been around water the last few days. I've been to Scotland and back to the lochs and rivers, and just cleansing that back flow.
There's something very nurturing about nature, but being by water, I think it really is good for the soul. We've just invested in some paddle boards.
Oh, lovely. I keep saying I want to try that.
It's it really is. It takes a bit of balancing, as with most things in life, but just being on the water, it's slow pace on a nice calm day, it really is an amazing feeling. It's very nurturing and restorative, which it's making time to do
what we need.
It's a very fast-paced world. So Kat, how do you work? How would people get in touch with you?
Yes, well, they can find me. My website is thehormonefairy.co.uk. There's various different ways to work with me, whether it's working through an online program, my membership, or working one-to-one with hormone testing and natural medicine or hypnotherapy. Or I've also got Instagram, where there's loads of free advice on Instagram. YouTube, you can find me at Hormone Fairy. Again, lots of free tips there and girl talk. And so the hormonefairy.co.uk. Find everything there. Just being joined by Angel now, the cat.
Oh, she's lovely. And yes, I think hopefully we're going to get you to come into my membership.
Yes, definitely, and help your ladies.
And help, yes, because there's definitely a huge crossover. And I think we just all need more education and awareness around it, don't we? And how we can support ourselves to feel better, because ultimately it's what we want to do, isn't it? It's just feel that little bit.
And we shouldn't feel miserable. That's the biggest thing. Menopause doesn't have to be miserable. Once you understand your hormones, understand the symptoms, and understand there's so much you can do naturally.
And like you say, just feel more alive, more energized, clearer. And reduce those symptoms that do weigh you down a lot, don't they? Oh, Kat, thank you so much. Thank you for your time.
My absolute pleasure.
Talking to you. Oh, bless you.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, you take care.
Bye.